This is an unplanned and unintended video arising out of a comment made by my good friend Sri J.Jayaraman to my recent video of the trek to the peak. Sri J.Jayaraman mentioned about a sadhu we had met in 1992 and who resided there near the top. I thought I could also share my feelings from that time in this separate supplementary video. So, this place is just below the peak, a sort of small enclosed space between rocks. The sadhu seemed to have attracted a band of motivated attendants who served him. The space was covered over with a ragtag tarpaulin with another cloth in front for a curtain. It was reported later that the sadhu had lived in this space for nearly 20 years, subsisting only on some herbal leaves. Unfortunately, around 2010, for whatever reason, the sadhu was forcibly evicted by the forest department, after which he went away to his native village and later shed his body. At the sadhu's cave, we crowded ourselves inside. Sri J.J. chanted some slokas. The sadhu simply kept looking. Towards the end, one of the so-called attendants came, poured some watery pre-prepared tea from a broken earthen pot into 3 coconut shells and said it was also spiced with some herbs and wished the sadhu too drank regularly. The youngster presented each tea shell to the sadhu, who added a little vibhuti in them and mixed it with his finger. He never uttered a word all the while. I felt this was meant to be some divine elixir which would make us immortal. Needless to say, I don't know what I drank, except it tasted just like vibhuti water. Alas, 30 years later, I am still only making YouTube videos to entertain myself and a few others. While on the subject of mystical encounters, I will take the liberty to narrate some incidents which I feel are more genuine experiences briefly. In the 1980s, a few articles appeared in the Mountain Path magazine relating to some living mystics in Tamil Nadu. Among them were 2 mystics who caught my attention. The first was one Mayama and the second was one Swami Girl. I used to visit Mayama every year between 1986 to 1988 in an isolated house near the foothills of Yerkod Hill in Salem, a famous tourist destination. She was being sheltered from public attention in that small house by Sri Ilayaraja, the famous Tamil film's music director. She was stated to be a reincarnation of Mother Kamakhi of the famous temple of that name in Assam. In her earlier years, she was seen on the beaches of Kanyakumari, wading in the sea waters in a supra-conscious state of the body. So much so that fish and insects of the sea would nibble away at her body. When I saw her, I could see a lot of deformities in that body. When she was shifted to Salem by Sri Ilayaraja, few people knew of her location. When I went there the first time, I felt an overwhelming presence of silence and peace. I kept revisiting her repeatedly during my visits to Salem to my sister's house. Just before deciding to come away to Tiruvannamalai in 1988 for good, I visited her during the summer of that year, wanting some kind of divine acknowledgement for an action that I was about to take against the wishes of my family. As I sat in front of her quietly, her personal attendant brought her some milk. She never spoke, nor could she walk or use her hands. After the attendant poured a bit of milk into her mouth, she stopped him and then suddenly pointed towards me with closed palms. The attendant came to me and said that the mother wants me to have the remainder of the milk. I felt a wave of emotion sweeping over me and knew I had received the confirmation I was seeking from the divine. The second mistake, whose story I read in the mountain path, was of one Koti Swami Girl. I think it was in 1987 when I was visiting my sister at Salem. I decided to visit Koti Swami Girl at a village called Puravipalayam, about 100 kilometers from Salem. My sister, out of curiosity at my strange behavior of visiting mystics, decided to accompany me. We reached Puravipalayam by bus around 11 am. There was a winding queue of devotees waiting in front of an old zamindar type of bungalow where the Swami Girl was residing. The crowd was big because we were told it was a special day, being full moon day. The Swami Girl was reputed to have performed miracles like feeding exactly 108 crows in an orderly fashion every new moon day, or drinking jugfuls of boiling water only. So, people were carrying offering of fruits, flowers, sweets, etc. for the Swami Girl. I felt awkward for not anticipating the importance of the day or the Swami Girl. Anyway, winding our way, we ultimately reached the terrace on the first floor, where the mystic was sitting under a veranda on a couch. He was wearing some fancy colorful long gown with a head turban. That surprised me. He did not seem to speak or generally respond much to devotees. When our chance came to stand in front of the Swami Girl to do our pranam and seek his blessings, an attendant by the Swami Girl's side asked me if we had brought any fruits or offering. Feeling a lot foolish, I said no. He smiled, took out 2 toffees from a large tray full of them, unwrapped and put them in the Swami Girl's mouth. The Swami Girl too appeared to chew once or twice and spit them out into the hands of the attendant. This was then given to my sister and me as prasadam. A bit nonplussed as what to do, we walked away from the terrace. My sister was very orthodox, me religious in a loose sense. After some discussion, we decided to eat our share of the toffees in the hope, or maybe greed, that it would bring some unknown spiritual benefits. Best of best. A blessing from Kanchi Mahaperiyawal. In 1984, when I was still young and viewed myself as a hi-fi brat, I came visiting my sister-in-law at the ashram. I consider her my friend, philosopher and guide, who introduced me to Bhagavan Sri Ramana in this life. One day, while staying with her for a week, the ashram had provided her a special accommodation in Ganesh building on top of Lucima's cottage. She wanted to take me to Kanchipuram to have the Mahaperiyawal's darshan. I agreed. We left early morning by bus in order to return by lunch. When we reached the Kanchimat around 8 am, we were informed that there was some unforeseen delay in the sage's darshan timings that day. We went out for a quick, short breakfast and returned back hurriedly. Still, no news of darshan timings. So we sat in a corner of the mutt, did some parayana, Lalita Sahasranama, Vishnu Sahasranama, etc. A couple of hours passed. Still, no one knew when the Mahaparamacharya was coming for darshan. A little later, there was a sudden commotion and people started rushing towards the Gaushala, where there is a row of small rooms. By the time we ran there was already a queue of 50-60 people with the Kanchi seer sitting at the door of one of the rooms. Devotees stood before the Mahacharya, putting out petitions for blessings or discussing family matters or temple events. I have never heard so much of chaste spoken Tamil in my life. I began wondering furiously what I should say, if anything, when I stood in front of the great sage. When we were just a few feet away in the line, I saw him sitting on his haunches on a wooden plank, somewhat absorbed in a crumpled newspaper in which some mangoes were offered by some bhakta. When the moment of reckoning came and we stood before him, my mind became numb. The sage continued with his newspaper. When the attendant asked if anything to say, my sister-in-law said we had come for the Paramacharya's darshan and blessings from Ramanashramam, Tiruvannamalai. The sage suddenly put aside the paper, looked at us through his thick glasses, raised one hand in blessing. The universal power of Bhagavan Sri Ramana. Nothing more to say or continue with. In the end, just saying, the blessings of these great sages and saints matter enormously for a silent spiritual evolution.